Okay, I want to start today with a question that feels simple, but the more you pull at the thread, the messier it gets.
Oh, yeah.
When you look in the mirror, what are you actually looking at? I mean, really looking at.
I think most of us would answer that pretty practically. We're looking
Yeah.
at ourselves, our face, our body, the gray hairs coming in.
Right. You see your features, you
Mhm.
see your gender, you see the resemblance to your parents, maybe your dad's nose or your mom's eyes.
Sure.
We define family and identity almost entirely by biology.
Mhm.
It's just the default setting. It's
Yeah.
the shared DNA, the history, the bloodline. That is who we are.
It's the glue of human society, really. I mean, it's how we organize everything from inheritance laws to, seating charts at weddings.
Mm.
If you don't have that blood connection, you're an outsider.
But today, we're diving into a stack of notes that argues that entire framework, everything we think we know about who we are and who we're related to, is essentially uh, a temporary placeholder,
Yeah.
a biological illusion.
It's a bit more radical than just a placeholder. These documents, they're titled 2026, 2.6, all notes and pasted text. They suggest that our biological identity is more like a husk.
A husk.
And the argument here is that human beings are meant to undergo a complete recreation that has zero to do with genetics, biology, or even gender.
Zero to do with gender. That's a bold
Well,
claim.
that's the claim in the text.
Okay, so the mission for this deep dive is to unpack this specific theological argument.
Mhm.
We're looking at how these texts distinguish between what they call earthly logic,
The biology
or
part.
the biology part, yeah, and heavenly logic, which seems to operate on a totally different operating system.
Think of it as a system update that doesn't just patch the bugs, it completely rewrites the user.
And just a heads up for you listening, these sources go deep. We're going to be talking about redefining father and son, moving past biological sex, and even a description of what they call a resurrection body, which is, well, is pretty sci-fi for a theological text.
It definitely pushes the boundaries of how we usually visualize these things. It
Yeah.
demands that you stop thinking physically and start thinking functionally.
So let's get into it. Segment one, the biology versus the theology. The source material starts in a surprisingly grounded place. It feels like high school biology class for a second.
It really does. It starts with the basics, just to establish a contrast. The notes explicitly lay out the principle of the earth. They state very bluntly, for human life to exist, you need a male and a female.
Right.
It specifically mentions the union of sperm and egg.
It says, quote, a man's sperm and a woman's egg become one. It's establishing the baseline mechanics. To make a life here, you need two distinct biological components. You can't get around that.
Right. But the text frames this mechanical process not as the ultimate reality, but as a temporary necessity. It calls this the logic of the physical world, but then it pivots hard. It introduces the principle of spiritual birth.
And this is where the operating system shifts, because the text reminds us that God is defined as spirit.
And that is the crucial variable we have to lock onto. If God is spirit, God does not have biological parts. He doesn't have DNA, sperm, or eggs.
Right.
So the text argues, logically, God cannot reproduce through a physical union.
Which makes sense. You can't use physical tools to create a non-physical being. It's like trying to build a website with a hammer and nails.
That's a good way to look at it. So if God is going to have children, if there is such a thing as a child of God, the mechanism of birth has to be fundamentally different. The source introduces this concept of the seed.
But just to be clear, because the text uses the word seed, we aren't talking about a biological seed.
No, and this is where we have to be careful with the metaphors. The text explicitly identifies the seed as the word of truth.
The word, so information.
Yes. The argument is that spiritual conception is an information transfer, not a biological one. It says spiritual birth happens when a person becomes one with the word of God.
Okay, help me visualize this. In the biological world, a child is born because physical genetic material is passed down from two parents. In this spiritual model, the genetic material is truth.
That's the core concept. Think of the word or the message as a strand of spiritual code.
Hmm.
When you receive that code, when you truly accept it and understand it, the text says a recreation occurs. You aren't born of blood, you were born of a message.
The text actually says, we become sons of God by receiving the word of truth. That represents a massive shift in power dynamics, doesn't it?
In what way?
Earthly children don't have a choice, they just appear. You don't sign a waiver to be born. But spiritual children are born through an act of reception. You have to let the seed in.
It shifts the definition of family from ancestry, which is passive, to belief, which is active. And that brings us to the most controversial, or at least the most confusing part of these notes.
Oh, yeah?
If the mechanism of birth changes, the labels we use for family, father and son, have to change too.
This is segment two. And honestly, this is where I got stuck for a minute.
Yeah.
Because the text keeps using these very traditional masculine words. It says father and son over and over. But then it seems to tell you to ignore the dictionary definition of those words.
It's a linguistic redefinition. You have to read it carefully. The voice in the notes is very deliberate about stripping away the gender norms associated with these titles. Let's look at father first.
Right.
The text insists that calling God father does not imply maleness. God isn't a man in the sky with a beard.
I see.
In this context, father is a functional title. It means source.
Like the father of modern medicine. It means the originator, the one who started it.
Correct. It's about origin, not anatomy. But the bigger leap, and the one that matters for you listening, is the redefinition of son.
Because usually, if you tell a room full of people you can all be sons of God, about 50% of them, the women are going to look at you funny.
Right. But the text argues that becoming a son of God has nothing to do with becoming male.
So a woman can be a son?
In the logic of this text, yes. Because son here refers to a new creature. It describes a being that has been recreated by the word. It's a rank, it's a status of inheritance.
It's like a job title. If you're the heir, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you hold the position.
Precisely. The text is saying we are using the word son because it implies inheritance and legal standing in this culture, but please understand this is a spiritual state, not a physical description.
So if I'm understanding the implication here, the text is saying your gender is just part of your earthly casing. It's not who you really are.
That is the core argument. The status of son of God is open to everyone who receives that seed, the truth. It frames this not as changing your sex, but transcending it. You are moving from a gendered physical existence to a non-gendered spiritual existence.
Transcending is a heavy word. It implies leaving something behind.
And they argue we are. We are leaving behind the biological scaffold.
Which leads us perfectly into segment 3. Because if we are leaving behind biology, what do we become? The text talks about the resurrection body. And this is where the notes get very specific about what that transformation looks like.
It does. It mentions a specific timeline when Jesus comes, but the focus is on the nature of the body itself. It says we get spiritual bodies.
And the comparison it uses, I wrote this down, is like angels.
Like angels. Now, I want you to pause and think about why it uses that specific comparison. It's not just because angels are holy or because they have wings and paintings.
Right. We usually think of angels as having wings or halos.
Yeah.
But the text focuses on function, right?
Exactly. The analysis in the text provides a very, very logical reason for the angel comparison. In a spiritual state, an eternal state reproduction is no longer necessary.
Oh, okay. I see where this is going.
Think about it. Why do we have genders? Why do we have male and female bodies?
To reproduce, to make more humans.
And why do we need to make more humans?
Because the current ones keep dying.
Bingo. Earthly bodies are designed for reproduction because we are mortal. We are running a relay race against death and we have to pass the baton. But if you step into an eternal state,
the race stops. You don't die.
And if you don't die, you don't need to replace yourself. If reproduction is obsolete, then the tools for reproduction, gender distinctions, sexual organs, male and female hormones are also obsolete.
That is strangely pragmatic. It's like if you convert a car to run on electricity, you remove the gas tank. Not because gas tanks are bad, but because the car doesn't drink gas anymore.
That's a perfect analogy. The text argues that the spiritual body is the result of that function being removed. It's a body designed for existence, not replication.
So when the text says we become like angels, it means we become beings that are complete in ourselves. We aren't halves trying to make a whole anymore.
Yes, it's a shift from temporary to eternal. Biological families are critical for the temporary world. We need them to survive here. But the text calls them limited. They are bound by time. They are quite literally till death do us part.
But the word-based family...
The word-based family exists in a realm without death. The text calls it an eternal family. God is the father, Jesus is the brother, and believers are siblings. But they aren't united by blood type. They are united by a shared DNA of the truth.
This is a beautiful image, this idea of a massive eternal family. But it creates a conflict, a pretty serious one.
It does.
Because if you prioritize this spiritual family, what happens to your loyalty to your physical family, your ancestors, your heritage?
That brings us to segment 4, the conflict. Bloodline versus belief. And the source material doesn't tiptoe around this. It actually gets quite aggressive.
Yeah, I noticed that. It brings up historical arguments, specifically referencing Abraham's descendants and the Jewish people of that time.
It uses them as a case study. The text claims that relying on your physical lineage, saying, I'm important because I come from this great family tree, is spiritually useless.
It goes further than useless. There's a line here, slaves of the devil.
It's jarring language.
It's harsh. Who are they calling slaves?
It refers to those who rely only on their physical bloodline. But we have to decode why the text uses such extreme language. It's not just an insult. It's a theological categorization.
Unpack that for me. How does loving your ancestry make you a slave?
It goes back to the principle of the earth. If you define yourself by your blood, you are binding yourself to the law of mortality. You are anchoring your identity to something that dies. The text argues that the devil represents the power of death.
I see.
So if you cling to the physical, you are enslaved to the cycle of death. You cannot escape it through your ancestry.
Okay, I get the logic now. It's saying your grandfather can't save you, your family name can't save you, because they're all in the same sinking boat of mortality.
Exactly. So what is the path to freedom? How do you get off the boat?
The text offers a solution. To escape slavery and gain freedom, you have to rely on the spirit that gives life. And again, it points right back to the word of truth.
It always comes back to the word in these notes.
It's the constant. The specific condition mentioned is receiving the name of Jesus. The text argues that because Jesus represents the Word made flesh, the seed that doesn't die, accepting that name, is the only way to transition from a temporary creature to an eternal one.
So it's a transaction. You are trading your reliance on your bloodline for a reliance on this truth.
And notice the leveling effect of that. The text says this offer stands regardless of your physical gender on this earth.
It's the great equalizer. It makes the playing field completely flat.
It really does. It frames lineage almost as a trap.
Yeah.
If you're counting on your background or your gender or your status, you're missing the point. You have to do the work of receiving the seed yourself.
That is the core of individual responsibility in these texts. You cannot inherit this spiritual status. You have to be recreated into it.
Yes, it's an active process. You don't just wake up a new creature. You become one by letting the information, the truth, rewrite your identity.
Which is a challenging thought for people who are, comfortable with who they are.
So let's try to pull all of this together. We've covered a lot of ground, from biological mechanics to angelic transformation.
It is a comprehensive worldview.
If we synthesize what we've learned from 2026.
Yeah.
2:6. All notes and the pasted text. The picture here is radically non-material.
It is.
The sources present a reality where our physical existence, our gender, our parents, our DNA is essentially scaffolding.
Scaffolding is the perfect analogy. You need scaffolding to build a skyscraper. You can't build it without it. You need the physical life to house the consciousness. But the scaffolding isn't the building.
And once the building is done,
You take the scaffolding down. The text is arguing that our biological lives are that scaffolding. We use them to find the truth, to receive the word, but once that spiritual self is complete, the biological husk falls away.
and the real reality, according to these texts, is built entirely on information. It's built on the word.
Which leads to that final picture the text paints, the eternal family. It's a community of genderless, angelic beings. They aren't united by last names or blood types. They are united by a shared truth, living with the Creator.
It's a vision of total unity that strips away all the categories we fight over. No male, no female, no my country versus your country, just new creatures.
It forces you to ask a very difficult question. What is essential about a human being?
Right.
If you take away the body, what's left? These texts say the word is left.
And that is a fascinating and maybe slightly terrifying place to land. It makes you look at your own life differently. We spend so much energy curating our physical identities, our looks, our gender expression, our family
We
legacies.
polish the scaffolding.
We polish the scaffolding.
Okay.
But this text is asking, what are you building inside that structure that will actually last?
That is the ultimate question.
I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. We've talked about how these texts view gender and biology as earthly tools that eventually expire. So ask yourself this. If you strip away your biology, if you aren't a man or a woman, and you aren't your parents' child anymore, what defines the you that is left behind? Is there enough of a spiritual self built by truth inside you right now to sustain you eternally? Or is your identity 100% tied to the temporary scaffolding?
That is a question worth sitting with.
Definitely. Thanks for diving deep with us